Ecuador begins the electoral silence period ahead of February 7th general election. This Friday, more than 600 people will vote from home. Cuban health authorities said to have capabilities needed to produce millions of monthly doses of its upcoming COVID-19 vaccines. And European High Representative Joseph Borrell arrived in Moscow to meet with Sergei Lavrov. The Russian foreign minister questioned the double standards of Brussels policy. Hello and welcome to teleSUR English. I am Estefania Bravo from the headquarters of Quito in Ecuador. This is From the South. On Friday, adults over 50 years old and with physical disabilities will exercise their right to vote from home in Ecuador's general elections. The mechanism will be carried out throughout the entire country. The general elections began this Thursday with the early voting of prisoners. Diana Tamain, president of the National Electoral Council, pointed out that 653 people with physical disabilities and over 50 years old will have the right to vote without leaving their home and in compliance with biosecurity measures. Ecuador's National Council for the Equality of Persons with Disabilities announced that all measures were taken to guarantee the success of the assisted home vote, taking place this Friday as part of the general elections to be held on February 7th.
Thanks to the cooperation agreements and efforts we have been carrying out with the National Electoral Council, the National Police, Taxis, the National Federation for People with Disabilities, we have been able to successfully ensure the presence of people with disabilities. The affirmative action measures, such as the preferential polling stations that have been implemented, around 4,385 polling places at a national level in the different electoral facilities, show the commitment we have to providing voting possibilities, as well as the Braille ballot papers. Around 8,000 Braille ballots will be deployed in the preferential polling places, plus the measures for the accompanying or assisted vote of persons with disabilities.
The Venezuelan government presented new details of the plan that mercenaries intended to execute against installations of the National Assembly. In a press conference offered this Friday, the president of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, presented the confession of Richard Alberto Grillet, a former worker of the unicameral body who was arrested and charged with the crimes of terrorism, treason, and illicit association after he tried to place explosives in the administrative headquarters of the Assembly and in the Parliament building. In his statement, the detainee confessed that he was contacted in mid-2020 by Colombian intelligence agents who offered payment for several acts of sabotage in Venezuela.
I am going to show the testimony of this terrorist, Richard Alberto Grillet Alvarez, security guard at the National Assembly, who was recruited by an agent of the CIA. We are going to show his photograph and his identification. Mr. Richard Grillet Alvarez, who was the deputy director of the Maracay Municipal Police of the Girardot Municipality of Aragua State, and was captured last Tuesday afternoon, January 26th, when he was about to place explosives at the National Assembly.
The president of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, also denounced that this new operation against Venezuelan institutions was planned and executed by a Central Intelligence Agency of Colombia.
Once again, the government of Colombia, once again, Iván Duque, in his murderous, aggressive obsession with Venezuela, this Mr. Richard Alberto Grillet Alvarez was recruited by this agent of the Central Intelligence Agency. Our intelligence sources in Colombia, because we have them, Iván Duque, told us that this gentleman is an already established agent. He is not an informant. He was not recruited for a specific action. No, he is an agent of the Central Intelligence Agency named Mariano José Ugarte Murillo. He is the one who recruited Richard Alberto Grillet Alvarez to commit acts of destabilization, sabotage, the placing of explosives, neutralization of a radar base, This is not the first time that the plan is hatched in Colombia. We have denounced it several times.
And the head of the parliament highlighted the multiple times the government has presented complaints of terrorism actions whose plans were also developed from the residents of the Spanish embassy in Venezuela.
So Venezuela has developed multiple actions. Many times we have denounced with evidence all these terrorist actions. We denounced the plans developed from the residents of the Spanish embassy, and we stressed it today. How much more evidence do you need to act against a person who betrayed the good faith of the Spanish embassy to plan all these acts?
In Cuba, health authorities said the country's pharmaceutical industry has the technological capabilities needed to produce millions of monthly doses of its upcoming COVID-19 vaccines. To date, Cuba is developing 4 vaccine candidates, 2 of which will move on the phase 3 clinical trials in March. Soberana 2 from the Finland Vaccine Institute and Abdallah from the Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology. Eduardo Ojito, director of the Center of Molecular Immunology, stated that they have the capability to produce 100,000 daily doses, meaning 12,000 doses per hour in each lab. Ojito added that once the regulatory authority approves, phase 3 production and distribution of the vaccine candidates will begin. Mexican authorities said they are monitoring for the possibility of a COVID-19 variant originated in the country.
If any variant of interest or any genomic sequence that could be of interest is confirmed, we will automatically inform you by means of a technical note to the General Directorate of Epidemiology. We hope that as a country, we could also have a strong response to detect any change that could be of relevance in our country.
The Broad Front of Uruguay is commemorating the 50th anniversary of its foundation this Friday as its first President General Liber Sergini with a series of solidarity events. In the context of limitations due to the pandemic, the political board of the Broad Front is commemorating the date in the Artigas Plateau and Paysandú department, the site chosen by Sergini's family in 2004 to scatter his ashes. As part of the activities to mark the 50th anniversary of the Broad Front, its grassroots committees are donating food for community soup kitchens, while on Saturday and Sunday they will collect signatures to promote a referendum on the urgent consideration law. The Broad Front was founded in 1971 as a result of the agreements reached between different leftist parties, groups, sectors, and leaders. The government of the Brazilian state of Minas Gerais and private mining company Vale reached an agreement on the compensation for the social and environmental damages caused by the dam collapse and toxic spill in 2019 in the municipality of Brumadinho. According to the agreement, the mining giants committed to pay $7 billion in compensation for the damages caused. The amount represents $4 billion less than what was initially demanded by the government from the company, which will not be responsible for removing the toxic waste from the area. The negotiations left out of the families affected by the incident, who stress the deal does not represent the reparations they are demanding. The dam collapse, which claimed the lives of more than 200 people, occurred in January of 2019 and saw toxic mining waste contaminate and destroy the municipality of Brumadinho. The Argentine government is working to ensure that transvestite, transsexual, and transgender people aspiring to work in the national public sector can do so by voluntarily registering. We have more details in this report.
With the announced measure, the national government guarantees the fulfillment of the 1% quota for trans workers in civil service jobs that President Alberto Fernandez established in the Decree 721 in 2020.
For us, as a public policy from the Ministry of Women, Genders and Diversity, we consider it vital to have some kind of response. In the context of the pandemic, that reveals the access to employment from trans people, and especially considering that this response is a comprehensive response, that it is related to social security, access to and permanence in the workplace, and of course, access to other rights related to educational and training aspects of employment.
The ministry official assures that this is a key step in the process of hiring and incorporating transvestite, transgender, and transsexual personnel into the national public sector.
Of course, this is not the only measure, but it seems fundamental to us to highlight affirmative actions in this context of serious inequality, where deep historical, social, and cultural inequalities are seen.
We should recall this is thanks to our murder collage Amancia Diana Zacayan, who was able to secure the labor quota law for the province of Buenos Aires 1 month before she was murdered in 2015. This register is of great importance, and all trans people must be aware of it to be able to access employment.
The historical response from society and institutions towards these citizens has been stigmatization, criminalization, and pathologization.
Today we have this register, and we hope that many of the transvestite and trans community can have access to work. This is very important because today, and not only in Argentina, but all of Latin America, 90% of travesti and trans people continue to subsist through prostitution. We are condemned to the violence of the prostitution system that robs of our life.
Although the regulation applies only to national public state entities, the Argentine Parliament will discuss a bill to ensure that the legislative and judicial branches also comply with the 1% quota during extraordinary sessions.
We need this law because this law demands and asks for us to be able to access state sector jobs, but also the private sector, and it includes incentive, aid, and tools for all those transvestite and trans people who want to work independently, who want to create their own micro-enterprises, who want to organize themselves in a cooperative way.
The public sector employment quota for transvestite, transsexual, and transgender people is a historic move that seeks to repair the structural inequality that exists in society with respect to this sector of the population.
Carolina Silvestre, TeleSUR, Buenos Aires.
This Friday, the European Union's High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Joseph Borrell, met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow. This was the first visit to Russia by an EU High Representative since 2017. Among the issues discussed by the two diplomats were the importance of continued implementation of the Iran nuclear deal, climate change, and also the global response to the coronavirus pandemic. Referring to COVID-19 and the need for vaccines, the top EU diplomat hailed the success of Russia's Sputnik V vaccine and said he hoped it could be certified for use in the bloc. Borrell added that relations between the EU and Russia have been marked by fundamental differences and also the lack of trust over the past few years. Lavrov in turn criticized sanctions on Moscow, saying that EU-Russia relations had gone through difficult times due to unilateral and illegitimate restrictions that the bloc imposed under false pretenses. However, both diplomats expressed their desire to continue working together despite these differences. And speaking in the Russian capital on Friday, the European Union's top diplomat said the bloc continues to reject the United States blockade against Cuba and hopes U.S. President Joe Biden will soon overturn his predecessor's decision to designate Cuba as a state sponsor of terrorism.
We regretted very much the designation by Trump to include Cuba as a country supporting terrorism. They take this decision on the last hours in office. And we consider, and I want to use this opportunity to insist that we strongly regret this kind of decisions, and we expect that the new administration will bring things back to the situation previous to this decision taken on the last minute by the Trump administration, which is going to create a lot of difficulties to the Cuban people and to the trade and economic relationship between the European Union and Cuba.
Delegates from Libya's warring factions selected new leaders to guide the North African country through two national elections in December this Friday. The move is seen as a major step towards unifying a nation with two separate governments in the east and in the west. 74 delegates choose a list of candidates in a United Nations-hosted process aimed to give balance to regional powers and various political and economic interests. Mohamed Younus Menfi, a Libyan diplomat with a support base in the country's east, was chosen to head the three-person presidential council. Meanwhile, Abdul Hamid Mohamed Deba, a powerful businessman backed by Western tribes, was chosen as interim prime minister. The UN process, known as the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum, was aimed at choosing an interim authority that will oversee Libya as part of an effort to rebuild state institutions and lead to national elections on December 24th.
The winning ticket that won 39 votes for the presidency of the Presidency Council, Mr. Mohamed Younus El-Menfi. On behalf of the United Nations, I am pleased to witness this historic moment.
According to a United Nations report released on Thursday, the leader of AlQaeda's Yemeni affiliate has been under arrest for several months. According to the report, Khalid Batarfi, leader of AlQaeda in the Arabian Peninsula for less than a year, was arrested, and his deputy Saad Atef al-Waki died during an operation in Gaita city. The document was submitted to the Security Council by a UN monitoring team specializing in terrorist groups and is the first official confirmation of Batarfi's arrest following unverified reports. The wide-ranging UN assessment did not disclose the leader's whereabouts or reveal any further details on the October operation. The terrorist group has carried out operations against both the Houthis and the Saudi-backed government forces in Yemen, as well as sporadic attacks abroad. On Friday, Myanmar's biggest city, Yangon, saw noisy protests for a fourth successive night as people opposed to this week's military takeover banged pots and pans and other objects. The noise lasted around half an hour in neighborhoods across the city. Earlier, the health workers, teachers, and students showed their opposition to the military authorities by openly holding daytime protests despite the fear of arrest. Monday's military takeover came as lawmakers gathered in the capital for the opening of a new parliamentary session. The military said the takeover was necessary because the government had not acted on its claims of fraud in November's election. The military has also stated that the takeover was legal under the Constitution. The political crisis in Tunisia continues to worsen after President Kais Saied refused to recognize the ministerial cabinet appointed by Prime Minister Hisham Meshishi. The Tunisian president claimed that some of the appointed ministers who have also been approved by parliament are implicated in acts of corruption. On the other hand, the head of the Heart of Tunisia party said he fears that a civil war could break out, while condemning the acts of violence seen in recent days and the weakening of the institutions. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And don't forget to follow us on our social media accounts. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For TeleSUR English, I am Estefania Bravo. See you next time.